Hey, welcome to a special edition of Leaving Ring Radio. I got Fight Hubs, the founder, creator of Fight Hub, Marcos Villegas. How you doing, brother?
I'm good. I'm good, man. Just glad it's a sunny day here in Southern California. We had a few days of rain, but I'm doing good. I'm doing as good as you could do
Right.
during this self-imposed quarantine.
So, how are you coping with it, man? First off, before we get into the stack up show, and we'll kind of give the description what the show is going to be about. But how are you holding up? What are you doing to occupy yourself? Are you playing like? Because most folks that I'm talking to, and even myself, I'm not a big gamer, but I'm starting to become a big gamer now because everybody's in quarantine or self shelter.
What are you playing?
I try to play like Call of Duty or the Fight Night Champion, the latest one that they had, right? I found out I'm not very good at it, and then when I get on the Call of Duty, I'm doing all right until my kids jump on, and then they kind of show out and kind of I'm not that good.
Yeah, I've been doing the same thing. I've been playing a lot of video games, to be honest.
Right,
I have all these games that because I'm so busy with work, I never get a chance to play.
right.
So I've been catching up on video games. I haven't watched one fight since all this has started.
Really?
I know everybody's been like showing like all the old fights.
Right.
Yeah, I haven't watched. That's a lie. I watched Vasquez Marquez 3. I watched that when they replayed it, and I watched Castillo Corrales. But outside of those two, I haven't watched any boxing. I've just been playing video games, been working, been running, been going outside away from people because where I live, there's a lot of trails. So I make sure to stay away from people. And when I see too many people, I go a different way, or I just go back inside, or I go in a different area. So that's kind of how I've been dealing with all this, like going outside and running and going on hikes, especially when I'm feeling a little down or like a little stir crazy.
Right.
It really helps, like big time.
I don't know about you, but my sleep schedule is so off right now. Like
Oh, my sleep schedule's horrible, man.
yeah,
I'm
man,
going to bed really late,
yep,
waking up really late too.
yeah, man.
Yeah.
I kind of find myself the way that Nautical series, the very first one where Pablo Escobar is just kind of like sitting at the bench or looking at the ocean.
Yeah,
I'm doing the
when
same
he's thinking
thing,
about his brother.
right?
Yeah, the memes. Yeah. No, same way, man. And like, I live by myself, so it's like a little
Oh,
worse
right,
because like I'm just here. I can't see any of my friends, and sometimes I'll call them, and
right.
I don't talk to a lot of people as it is normally, to be honest, But I've been video chatting a little bit more, and that's helped. But man, for those people that are in with like their families and stuff,
Yeah,
consider it a blessing, man.
right.
Because like when you live by yourself, you don't got anyone to talk to. At least you got family members to talk to.
No pets, bro. No cats, no dogs. No, that's
No,
it.
I wish I had pets, man. My landlord won't allow us to have dogs. We're allowed to have cats,
Mm,
but I've been very hesitant about getting a pet because I'm gone so much when I work that
right.
I think it. Last thing I want to be is an irresponsible pet owner, and
Exactly.
I don't want to do that. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's why I choose not to have a pet right now.
Yeah, I mean, I got my kids, my both my grown kids, they're in college, but they're since there's no school, they're in the house, and then I got my two little fur babies and I got the wife. So, even though I got somebody to talk to, there are a lot of downtime for me because of the sleep, like the sleep schedule. I wake up, everybody's in bed, and then when I'm asleep, everybody gets up. So I'm almost like living by myself in some ways or not. But good thing, man, that we got this outlet here still. Even though there's no boxing and there's no actual sports being played, at least we have the opportunity with the internet to still be social. Having that social distance that they're asking for that we need right now in this time, at least we can still interact with each other, right?
Yeah, no, we can, but sometimes that social media gets a little too much too, man. I've noticed people
Right.
have stopped like logging in as much the last week, and I think it's I don't know, like they just get over it. It's overwhelming for people, and,
Right.
and like a lot of people have said like, it's too much. Like I just need to like do something else
It can cause a
with
lot of
everything that's
anxiety,
going
man.
on.
To tell you the truth,
What's up?
I mean, the social media, it's toxic sometimes. It could cause anxiety.
Yeah, that's true. It can,
You
it
know,
can, especially when people are posting about like what's going on and stuff like
right,
that. I could see people like, nah, I don't want to hear about how bad it is anymore. But
right,
like, what I tell my friends is like, bro, like this reality, like you can't hide from reality. Like this is what's happening. Like you got to be aware of what's happening, and you got to go and adapt to it. You just can't hide from the fact that this thing's going on.
exactly.
You can't hide from reality.
No,
You
you
got to
can't.
face reality. This
Yeah,
is this is what's happening.
you got to face it and also got to understand the information that's being put out there.
Hmm.
And not go blind out to the world where you may miss something that's going to be crucial, not just to your life but to everybody else that's around you. Right.
No, no, for sure, man, for sure. Definitely, there's been a lot of disinformation like
Right.
put out there like about this, and even like I remember like even in the beginning, a lot of people weren't taking it serious.
Yeah.
uh, and they were putting out stuff like, oh, the flu kills more people. This thing has killed more people than the flu now.
Oh
you
yeah.
know
And then in the
and
span of
like,
2 months, let's think about that.
yeah.
Where the flu is like a 6 months period time, and this thing is just taking out people in 2 months and
And
stuff.
then that's really really pissed me off when I started seeing it, because I saw a lot of boxing people post stuff like that, and it
Yeah.
got me really really angry, because I had a friend who's a doctor from Australia,
Uh-huh.
and because at first I was like in the middle, like I knew it was bad. I trusted what was coming out from the media, because we
Right.
work in media. You could tell when something's bullshit or not. You could always fact check it.
Right.
So a lot of the stuff I was seeing, like, hey, no, this is really happening. But I didn't think. I was thinking, well, I'm young. If I get it, I'll be fine. And then I spoke to my friend from Australia, who was telling me, like, dude, there's a big amount of young people that are getting it, and yes, some of them are getting better,
Right.
but some of them are in the ICU because they have pre-existing conditions that they never knew about. If you had pneumonia before as a kid, if you had asthma as a kid, this is gonna hit you even more.
Right.
I had pneumonia when I was young.
Oh
She's
yeah.
like, yeah, your lungs probably have scar tissue. It's probably gonna hit you harder than a normal person. It
Right.
could. So after I had that conversation with her, this was when I was in Washington D.C., because we had a Fox show scheduled.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we got there on Thursday. I spoke to her on Thursday, and Fox had asked us. Sorry, that's the alarm to be here on the podcast.
No, no, no. Go ahead.
Fox
Yeah.
had asked us to leave, and I was thinking, maybe I should stay, like, free hotel, like maybe I should stay an extra days just to kind of see DC.
Right.
And
Live
after
it
I
up.
talked to her, I was like, nah, I'm getting the hell out of here, man. Like I'm going back home.
You know, you know what's crazy is that when folks are saying it doesn't attack you if you're fully healthy, but here's the thing: is as Americans, a lot of us consume a lot of stuff that's not even healthy for us. I mean,
Bro,
think
here's
about.
the thing.
Go ahead.
You know what? That's a great point. We're not healthy. Americans are
No.
the least healthiest out of everyone around the world,
And how
like
many
because of
Americans
food and
go to
diet.
checkups? Let's think about that.
Yeah,
So how do you really know if you're really that healthy?
you don't.
Exactly.
You don't. We eat crap food. We don't exercise. We drink way too much. All the
Yeah.
food that we have has stuff that we don't know about. Like we're not a very healthy population as
No.
a whole, Americans.
No. We're on the bottom pole of when it comes to health, being healthy, and also when it comes to education. A lot of us jump the gun. Most Americans just read the headlines before they read the body of content that's being put out there. You know that. You've been in
Yeah.
working media for years. You put a title over your video or your interview, and it's just the lead in. It's not necessarily what the whole interview is going to be about, and how many people jump down your neck. Without even listening to the interview, right?
Yeah, I get that a lot on like the comment section. I always have to tell them, like, bro, listen to the full interview. Like always, like all you did was just read the headline and commented. Like listen to the
Right.
video. Yeah, no, I feel you on that.
So let me ask you this: when did you know you had something with Fight Hub? Because this is the first time I've ever spoken to you. So I'm kind of curious. When was it that first video where you said, "Dude, I got something. I can do something with this"?
Yeah, I think I was very fortunate. that when I started doing Fight Hub, it was still very early on in YouTube.
Right.
So it's a lot different now for people. The first video that I did ended up getting like a good amount of views. I think it got like 30,000 views, but I still didn't think like I had something there. I just thought like, well, that was a funny video. It was random.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the guy that I did the video with had a good following at the time. Maybe it was his followers that went ahead and did it. I did a few more interviews and did it all right, And then I did a video with Bob Sapp
Oh,
that ended up getting 1 million views 3 weeks later.
wow.
So within a month of posting these videos on YouTube, that had happened. The first video and then that Bob Sapp video that did like 1 million views. And I hadn't even named it Fight Hub yet. It was just still like my personal channel. Luckily, YouTube allowed us to change the name of it. So I changed it to Fight Hub. But
Right.
it was at that point where I was like, hey, this isn't normal. Like, people don't normally get 1 million views like a month into doing this. And that's when I thought, like, hey, maybe I could do something with this. Like, maybe there's something here. So yeah, very very early on, a month into it, back in 2009.
Okay, so let me ask you what because you know what the reason I got into YouTube back in 2008 was because I had no outlet. Over here, I was born and raised in San Jose, which is an hour away from San Francisco. And San Jose, you would know this. It's like the mecca of MMA. You know,
Yeah,
everybody's
Tachi
there.
Palace, a lot of stuff. I
Right.
went to those Tachi Palace fights.
Yeah. You know, so I was a guy that rarely ever spoke to anybody about the sport that I love. And my sister's the one that brought a computer because I was still kind of living in the caveman years. And she was like, check these guys out. And I remember watching a few videos of the very first YouTube guys that were talking boxing. And I was like, what are these guys talking about? And that's what sucked me in. You know, that's when I started doing videos. And same thing like you. I was like, oh, I'm not really sure what it's going with. And I actually just kind of did it kind of like as a goof for a minute. But then, like in that same year, Jack Mosley contacted me, and they were like, "Hey, we'd like you to come down and do an interview to interview us." And I was like, I'm not media, you know. I'm just a blue collar guy, you know. That's all I do. So I went down there, started that, and then it just kind of steamrolled after that. So what got you involved?
Hmm. Um, I was also doing work for an MMA company,
Mm-hmm.
doing marketing. So they already had me going to the gyms and getting content to promote like their fights with their fighters. And just so happened, a lot of those guys were, because I started doing MMA first before boxing. Boxing came as a natural progression as I
Uh-huh.
got credibility like in MMA with the channel. I started reaching out to boxers and I transitioned over there to boxing. I'd always liked boxing, but just so happened I was doing work for an MMA company and I was already getting content for them. And a lot of the content they didn't want to use, so I would post it up.
Hmm.
So it was a natural progression, people started seeing like, hey, you're doing interviews, and then I thought, well, if I'm doing this with MMA, I like boxing just as much as MMA. Why
Right.
don't I try to go to these boxing gyms and reach out and get content, because at the time there wasn't a lot of people doing it. And I thought, hey, this would be a good way to bring another audience into the channel. It is called Fight Hub. There's more
Right.
than one fight sport. So yeah, that's how it happened with boxing. And I don't remember what my first boxing event was. I remember the first boxing fight I got credentialed to, but I think the first boxing event I went to, I think it had to have been a press conference with Chris Ariola
Hmm.
and Tom
Goose and
Adam.
Tudor?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think after that that was the first boxing fight I got credentialed, was Ariola versus Adamek, and then from there that's how me covering boxing started.
I was at that one too. Wow.
Oh, you were?
Yeah, yeah, I was. You know what's funny is that I think Goosen too. I remember Craig Goosen was like one of the very first to kind of see that there was something there with YouTubers. You know, because
Mm.
Golden Boy. I remember when I was trying to press with them of getting credentials and showing them like the videos and how many hits I were getting. They kind of looked at it and they're like, yeah, like we don't know what that
Yep.
is. Get
Yep.
out of here.
Golden Boy would not credential me at the beginning. No one
Nobody.
credentialed me but them.
Yeah.
But Goodson Tudor and Thompson Boxing, those were the only two
Only.
that would
Yeah.
credential me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
man, that's kind of strange, but here we are. You know, they all thought it
Yeah,
was
I
kind of
know.
like a fab, and it was going to just disappear and fizzle out. But
No.
You know. Anyways, man,
Yeah,
glad to
it's
have you
crazy. I
on. So
remember that fight, that Adamek fight. I was like in the back row, and I remember I had a press member from Poland right next to me, and I thought it was the funniest thing. And I'm not like a PC guy at all, you know.
uh-huh.
But I was like, dude, this guy's gonna get his ass kicked if he keeps yelling this. So like during the fight, he kept yelling, and I don't know if you heard him, but he was loud. He kept yelling, "Hit that fat burrito! Hit that fat burrito!" And I was like, dude, this guy is gonna get decked. Like, does this guy not understand? There's nothing but Mexicans here.
Mexicans,
Like,
yeah.
someone's gonna punch this guy. But it was the funniest thing because I'm like, dude, you're supposed to be a press guy, and he's like cheering for Adamic and hit that burrito, hit that burrito, and I was just like, man, this guy's nuts.
Yeah, I don't remember. I mean,
Remember that?
I
Yeah.
remember how electric it was there. I had a chance to interview everybody, after and all that, but no, I don't remember
Dude,
that.
yeah, I was
There was,
surprised that there's that many Polish people there
I
in
know,
Southern
bro.
California, right? There was a lot of
Yeah,
Polish fans
there
there.
was a lot. There was a
Yeah.
lot,
Where'd they
man.
come from?
I don't
I've
know.
never seen that many Polish people in Southern California ever.
And they were talking a lot of shit.
Yeah, they were. Yeah, they were. Yeah, they were.
They were talking a lot of shit, but it was
Yeah,
great.
they were.
It was a phenomenal experience. I stopped covering events though, to tell you the truth. I just really stuck with the whole podcasting. I just started doing that. I honestly, I will tell you what happened with me was I got tired of the boxing politics, the good old boy club stuff.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah. No, and it's still there, bro. It's still
it
there. It's
is.
still. You would think, someone like me who is with the network now wouldn't have to put up with as much of that, and I still have to, man.
Right.
It's still hard at times, man. I still got to fight to get interviews,
Yeah.
to get stuff, to get, I think given the size of my outlet,
Right.
um, we still get looked down upon because we're digital. We don't
Right.
get the same preferred access still as print, or no, mostly print, to be honest.
Right.
So yeah, it's still happening, man.
Yeah. Yeah. I still see it. I see it out there
Mhm.
all the time. I don't engage as much as I used to, but I do. I still witness it. So let me get
Yeah,
down and tell everybody what the show's about. It's called the Stack Up Show, and I'm not a fantasy fight kind of guy. Never have been.
yeah,
But how times are right now, we're all on lockdown, and pretty much all I've been able to do, like the rest of the world, is go back and look at old fights. So I figured, why not bring one of the OGs, yourself, Marcos, with me, and we would do a fantasy fight. So see how the older guys would stack up to the guys that are current, of today. And I picked two names that I picked that I thought were kind of interesting. Costa Zoo and Marcos Antonio Barreras. Both guys I was a huge fans of, grew up watching them, and I still think to this day that they stack up pretty well to some of the current champions or current contenders in the division.
no, definitely they do, man. So I like this, but sometimes it's hard.
Right,
I think with certain fighters, because we hold them at such high reverence that I think
right,
sometimes it clouds our judgment to the reality of athletes now are better than what they were before. But I think in the case, and you put it correctly, in the case of Costa Zoo and Barrera, I think they would still do very, very well today because they were both very fundamentally balanced,
right.
both very, very good. Good. Costa Sue had that power that would have set him apart from a lot of people now, and it set him apart back then. So yeah, man, let's do this. I'm excited.
Okay, so let's go with the first one. Now, I wanted to go with Costa Zoo because
Yeah.
there's some stuff that you touched on that I was going to talk about. One that Costa Zoo, if you really look at some of the European fighters, they still are very mold the way Costa Zoo was because that was kind of a traditional style of what they grew up with, like the Kalishkos. Very 1-2, stand upright, look for the big punch, not waste a whole lot of punches, and really start everything off with a jab. So I still believe Costa Zoo would either be a titleist or be a unified champion. But then when you look at who he's lost to Vernon Phillips and then to Hatton later down the line in his lane of his career, I think he kind of gave that fight away with Hatton just because I think he wanted to pass the pass the guard along and stuff. I don't think he wanted to be part of the sport. That's my theory. That's my hope. You know what I mean? Because I was so bro, I was brokenhearted when he lost to Ricky. I was like, oh shit. But I think Josh Taylor. If we look at the styles here, Josh Taylor, in my opinion, who's got 16 wins and 12 KOs, right? His footwork, hand speed, the overall IQ that I've seen so far from him, I don't know about you, Marcus, but I think he gives Costa a lot of problems.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think the world is starting to see how good Josh Taylor is. I remember when I first saw him, I want to say maybe 2 years ago. My first reaction was, "Holy shit, this kid is really good."
Right.
Really, really good, solid fundamentals. Really, really good speed. The speed would have been a problem for Costa, though he did fight speed fighters, uh, in his career, and he would always be able to. You know what Costa had? Really good timing.
He
And
did.
that's the thing that they say about beating a speed fighter. Speed timing beats speed. So you got to think if there was a fight, maybe Josh Taylor would have pulled ahead on the cards, and it would have been something where Costa would have been hunting, would have been pressuring, timing, and just waiting for that one big shot. And that's the thing, has Taylor ever taken a punch the power of someone like Costa? You would think, Regis Prograis is a big puncher, but
Right.
not like Costa. He had way different power. Even the way he would throw his punches were different. It's just a different technique of throwing them. So it'd be interesting. I would think it would be something where he would be behind on the cards and he'd have to trail back and have to do something dramatic. But it's
Right.
always hard when you have a guy like that I don't want to say he's plotting, but the way his feet are set because he's a power guy, and because his feet are set like that, they're not as fast moving around the ring. And you got to think Taylor would have used his speed to move around the ring and just try to outbox Costa in a potential fight.
I agree with that. The thing with Taylor, he's not Zab Judah. Zab Judah had
Yeah.
speed, but his speed was in spurts. It wasn't consistent. Like he always needed to like re-gear himself in order to let his hands go again. What Costa is that consistent pressure. And the one thing that I've always admired about Costa is that you always knew that he was gonna throw that right hand, no matter what. He'd measure you with that left hook, that left hand, that left jab, and then he would find that time and that range just to throw it down that pipe and hit you. He didn't have a whole lot to his arsenal. He only had those 3 punches, but man, he was good at it. He was really good at applying pressure, and he was really good at throwing those punches when he needed to throw them.
Yeah, and who's to say too that the pressure wouldn't have bothered Taylor, where Costa would have been able to cut the ring off and trap Josh in the corner or in a preferable distance where he could time those punches, where he could throw the jab, flick the jab to the body, flick the jab to the top, and follow it up with the right hand. Costa was tremendous at that, and that's the other thing with when you fight a fighter that is a mover or has a lot of speed. There's a few ways to go around it. Obviously one of them is to pressure them, not allow them to move and cut the ring off. It's a lot harder for the pressure fighters now to do that
Yeah.
because these guys are very conditioned, and I think you're having to eat a lot of punches on your way in because a lot of the pressure fighters now don't move their waist or don't pressure with the jab coming forward, which would cause the other opponent to not.
So we're back here. Sorry about that if we fell off for a short bit, but we're back on. I would have to agree with you. I think that Kasazu could edge, even possibly get that late stoppage. But God, I like Josh Taylor a whole lot. I think that right now he's the it factor. He's the man to beat in that division at 140. You know, I, I agree with D Style who just put it up a comment saying, I don't think Josh Taylor is strong enough to even hold back Costa Zoo. I don't think so either. We haven't really seen
Hey,
him have to do that
that's
yet.
a good point, man. That's a very very good point. And it all comes back down to what we were saying about pressure. It's like I've always said for the longest time. If I was a fighter at welterweight, I would hate to fight Sean Porter because of the pressure. Because that's a long night, a lot of work, and he's gonna make you work, 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 work. And
Yeah.
when you face a pressure fighter, it's not only physically taxing, man. It's mentally taxing too,
Yes, it
dude.
is.
Like you're in there and you're just like you have to be focused at all times. You don't really get a moment to breathe or catch your breath. This guy's on you, on you, on you. You're throwing your best punches, and the guy keeps coming, and then now you're having to fight like mental emotions. Like, dude, like I just hit this guy with like a bunch of punches, and he's still coming forward. Like, what the heck,
Exactly.
It's very, very draining overall to fight a really well conditioned pressure fighter. Now, imagine if it's one who's stronger than you, who's used to fighting bigger guys, and packs a bigger, way bigger punch than you. It can end up being overwhelming, and it's not surprising how a lot of these guys end up drowning people in the later rounds. But this is the thing: we don't see a lot of great pressure fighters now. To be honest,
We
who's
don't.
a great pressure fighter right now? Like it's hard to list. Like the last great pressure fighter to me was Margarito.
Hmm.
The last great pressure where he came forward, threw a lot of punches, and was on you, on you, on you, did not let you breathe. I haven't seen a guy like that lately.
No, no. I think everybody right now is more into trying to mold themselves into a three-headed type of fighter. Pressure, be elusive, and be the best fighter they can possibly. And I don't think that works. I think with Antonio Margarito was he understood who he was and what he could do in the ring, so he stuck with that. Just like Costa Zoo, you didn't see Costa try to be the most elusive guy. He didn't try to be like a Pernell Whitaker. He wasn't the fastest person, but he stuck to what he knew and he perfected what he had. And that's what, in my opinion, made him a great fighter. Now, the other guy that's in 140 division right now, you got Jose Ramirez out of Fresno, California, 25 wins, 17 KOs. I think that's a completely different fight. But I think, Marcos, in my opinion, I think that is the most winnable fight for Casasu because that's the kind of guy he would want to face. Somebody to come forward. He had a lot of great success with some Mexican fighters and champions in his time, right?
No, he did. That would have been a fight of the year type of fight, probably round of the year. It would have been a great fight for as long as it would have lasted because Jose likes to brawl, dude. He likes
He
to
likes to
fight.
mix it up. Yeah.
Yeah, he likes to bring it, and that Costa would do the same thing. So I think with there, I don't think Ramirez would have had quite the punch to maybe back Costa and gain his
Right.
respect in terms of being weary about which punches to throw and when to throw and how many punches to throw. I think the power would have made the difference there for Costa as well as the technique there. I would have favored Costa in that fight because that's his style, and he's a lot better at that style than I think Ramirez is at this point. Though Ramirez is
Right.
getting better, but I think we've seen that the power is just not quite there in comparison to Casazu when you match those two guys up.
I don't think there's denying though that what we've seen from Jose Ramirez of late. I've seen him being with the Garcias now. I think it's helped him out a lot. I see him sitting on the punches a lot more. He seems to be a bit more heavy-handed. I didn't think he was going to stop Maurice Hooker. I thought that Maurice was going to really get. I thought it was going to go the distance. To tell you the truth, I just thought it was going to be a brutal and maybe there'll be a TKO based on cuts and bruises. But the way Jose Ramirez came out, I mean, man, he's impressed me every single time since being with Robert Garcia.
No, he's improved big time. He's gotten a lot better, and yeah, the power is starting to develop a little bit more. But Costazu is just a born puncher, man. Like you can improve things to get more power out of people, but at the end of the day, like that old adage, like punchers aren't made; they're born. It's true. Some guys are just naturally like heavy-handed. Their body mechanics they're just different. Their muscles and tendons are connected just differently, where they're able to leverage more of their weight and get power behind them. There's some guys that you could do everything in the world, strength training,
Right.
the highest tech type training, and they're never going to be big, powerful punchers. You could sit on your punches and get more leverage, but at the end of the day, if you don't have that God-given power, like you can't turn a guy who doesn't have that much power into a murderous puncher. It just doesn't work that way.
Now, Riga's Progress is a bull, and obviously Josh Taylor kind of showed what he could do with a bull. But I still say this is a very interesting fight for Costa Zoo. Costa Zoo was overwhelmed by Ricky Hatton, a Mauler style. Could Rigas do the exact same thing Ricky Hatton was successful with against Costa Zoo, Marcus?
Well, it all depends. Obviously that was later in the career of Costa
Right.
Zoo. Ricky Hatton was just a buzzsaw, man. This guy never would get tired, relentless, another pressure guy, that would just go to the body, would wrestle a lot, do a lot of pummeling to get you tired. And I come from a wrestling background, an MMA background, in
Mm-hmm.
terms like I trained all that all my life. So when you're pummeling on the inside, it gets you tired. Like that's a whole different type of conditioning that you have to do so you don't get tired. Your arms get really heavy, your shoulders get heavy, and that tires you out. And that Ricky liked to work on the inside, liked to pummel. Get a glove in there, get a glove out, throw a punch, put that glove back in, throw a punch to the body. That would have been tiresome. Now with Regis, I don't think Regis throws as much as Hatton, though he's certainly heavy-handed. But I think he's missing the volume there of a Hatton.
I think so too. I think the body work of a Hatton is what Regis needs to
And that
bring.
too.
Needs
Yeah.
to bring to that table. I mean, look, I've always said this to fighters. I mean, I'm pretty sure when you have spoken to fighters, a lot of them will tell you, I don't go back and watch old fighters for some reason. There's no interest in there, which I've always found very weird. That they don't go back and look at certain tricks that the old fighters used to bring to the table. Because I think that if a lot of them did their homework, you wouldn't really hear a lot of folks saying that the teaching in boxing is becoming extinct, because fighters would be able to pick this up with their own eyes and see that. Because I've worked with kids that you could talk to them till you're blue to the face, but until you show them that it works, that's when they get that moment, like, oh, now I know what you're talking about. Now I know what you mean. And I think that's why we see the lost art of a pressure fighter, like you were mentioning earlier. Because I've always said, like, Mike Tyson and even the late of Julio Cesar Chavez Sr.'s career had kind of tarnished the way fighters look at having balls out style. They believe that taking a lot of shots to the face and head is the natural way of being the bull in the ring, of coming forward. But they don't look back past the beginning of these guys' career, where their head movement was there. How Julio Cesar Chavez used to pair a lot. How he used his feet to close that distance to get to the body. Those are the things that is missing. I think Rivas can do it, but it would be something that he would have to discipline himself and kind of go back to that drawing board, because he would really need that with Costa Zoo. So I think Costa Zoo, in my opinion, I think he stops him in mid rounds.
It's hard to unlearn what you have learned already, because it's years and years and years of building that foundation. So it's hard to go and incorporate something completely different and completely new, because you kind of freak out. You kind of like lose your way in a way when you do that. But I do agree. When you look at Tyson and Chavez, especially Chavez, man, that guy was super defensive, even though he was offensive, because of
Right.
what you mentioned, like the head movement, moving the waist, using the glove out there to parry. So that's the other thing too. It surprises me when they don't watch old tape. I know trainers do, but like every single like the tape is there. Like whatever like fighter you're going up against, that style has already been there,
Right.
and those fighters with that style have been beaten. So the blueprint is in the tapes in the history of boxing. Pressure fighters, slick fighters, punchers, all those styles have been beaten. You just got to go back through the history of boxing and see how those fighters, why they lost, what these other fighters did to combat that. Like every single blueprint to beat a fighter is there in video on tapes
Right.
of these fighters that have these fights that have happened in the past. So I've always wondered that too. Like if I was a trainer and told me like, hey, you're preparing for this slick style, I'd go and look up slick guys that have lost fights,
Right.
and seen those fights and be like, okay, what worked there? And obviously those fighters are completely different than the fighters that are fighting, But I would say like, oh well, this seemed to work here. Why did this work? No, I have this guy. What does this guy do that's similar to that? Okay, let's build onto that.
Yeah, Costa Zoo was a throwback. I remember watching him, and he would do these little subtle things that got him that edge. Like if he missed with the right hand, he still would clip you the way Roberto Duran used to clip you with the left hook with the elbow. He would skin you a bit. He was one of those very physical guys when he got in close with you. I mean, look at how he dismantled Zab Judah. He made sure that he was on him. He didn't give him that room to breathe. And here's the thing. He actually forced Zab Judah to step backwards, not step aside. He didn't give you that split second to think. And that's what a lot of pressure fighters don't understand. I'll tell you the last pressure guy that I saw that did a phenomenal job against the up-and-comer that now is considered one of the pound-for-pound fighters of the world, Vasily Lomachenko, is when he got in with Orlando Siri. I mean, Orlando was on him. He never allowed this kid to breathe. He didn't allow him to think. He didn't allow him to use his footwork. He didn't allow him to do the pity pat to find the little kinks in his defense. He made sure that he backed him up. And then when he didn't back them up, he roughed them up all through the rounds.
Yeah, that was a big learning experience for Lomachenko. He roughed him up, man. He mugged him in that fight. He was hitting him everywhere. It didn't matter where. Hit him in the balls, hit him in the hips,
Yep.
hit him in the hips. It didn't matter. But he obviously, if that fight were to happen now, is completely different. Salido, I don't even think Salido, even though he hasn't, did he ever? I don't think he ever announced that he was retired. But he's like a politician now in Mexico.
He's a politician in Mexico, and he's out of the limelight. I see Sean Gibbons. I had him on. I think it was last year. And I remember him, man. He was just like, "Hey, but we still got that one up on Lomachenko." I was like, "Yeah, you do."
No, they do. But that shows you what when a pressure fighter done right can do with a style like that. And Chavez versus Roger Mayweather. There's so many examples of how to nullify like a defensive fighter, and it is with smart pressure that's built upon a double jab. I feel, but yeah, no, that I was there live when Lomachenko lost that fight, man. It's crazy, dude, because. You know what the consensus was on Press Row?
What was that?
Was this guy's done. That's it. Like all this hype and what? That's what a lot of people were thinking. Like, this guy was overhyped. He couldn't even beat Salido. And like the thing is, like Salido's a guy. Like, yeah, he has a journeyman record, but like on any given night, Salido could have beaten anybody in the world.
I mean, well, look at his resume.
He's a handful.
Look at his Robert Guerrero. Yeah. He beat Robert Guerrero. He beat. He was tooth and nails with Gamboa. Went over to Puerto Rico, dismantled Lopez. I mean, his resume is extensive. I remember the same thing. I remember it was like, oh, Lomachenko is done. He's wiped off the earth. There's no reason to bring up his name. And I'm like, man, you lose to a guy like that, and that's the end of the road for you? I mean, that's really where boxing and fans are always at. They think that one blemish is completely it. That's the antidote of being written off the map of boxing, the landscape of boxing. That's really not. I mean, our best fights. So we were talking about this because we do a show that's called right now that we're doing. It's called Beer, Boxing, Quarantine. And I was mentioning that if you really think about all the great fights the fights that have made it to fight of the year, or or have given you produced some of the best leather being thrown on television, have all been from guys that don't have blemished records. They don't have anything to lose anymore. That pressure of keeping that when it's gone, we tend to see these guys perform 3 times, 4 times better in the ring.
Yeah, now that I think about it, you never seen a guy who was undefeated be like in a fight of the year, really, to be honest, huh? I'm trying to think like over the years.
I'm trying to think of one right now. I mean, except, well, I mean,
like Canelo Golovkin, but that wasn't the fight of the year for me, you know?
Right.
Well, no, Canelo had the one loss to Floyd, so that's
exactly.
Okay, that's out. Yeah, I can't really think of anything, that's a good point. And I think fans in general need to get over the notion of a fighter's garbage if they have a loss. And you know who's the best example of that? At present, Julian Williams. Everybody wrote him off after that knockout that he had to Charlo.
Right.
People said he was done, he was finished, that he wouldn't amount to anything anymore, and then he ends up winning the titles. Yeah, he loses them again, but that just goes to show you, like, hey, like this guy has already proved everybody wrong. Any given night, anybody could lose. That's how it is in any sport. In any sport, any given night, when you're facing the top competition, any given night you can lose. It all amounts to the little mistakes. Everybody's on the same level when you're at that elite level, and it's just one little slip of can end up costing you a fight. And in the general sports world, it's the little mess ups that end up going to your loss. Why do you think the NBA, the finals is 7 games?
Right.
Like I said, because they're all on the same level.
Exactly. And speaking about that, like Williams, I mean, the guy that we're going to be talking about next is a guy that had practically 3 different careers in his whole boxing resume. Marco Antonio Barrera. I mean, here's a guy starts off as a bantamweight, was just mowing through guys, moves up to featherweight, loses to Pacquiao, and loses to Eric Morales, but then comes back and beats Hamed. I mean, it just shows you any given night, in any fighter that digs deep and really honestly decides to kind of break themselves apart and then rebuild themselves can do a whole lot in boxing. I mean, I always find it kind of puzzling that how fight fans, they always forget that what we really truly love about the sport is the backstory. That's what sucks us in to sitting down and watching these guys and being emotional, going through this roller coaster of rounds with the guy you're rooting for. It's really because of their story and their fight style and what they've been through and what they've accomplished or what they're hoping to accomplish in the sport. I mean, it's just the beauty of any combat sport.
No, very true. That's what sucks you in, because you could relate to that struggle, because a lot of these guys, come from disadvantaged backgrounds or very hard upbringings, and you feel for them because we all want to see somebody who comes from a very poor economic and social background go and move up and become successful. I think that's everybody's dream is to become successful to a point where they don't have to struggle anymore. And that's one of, I think, the greatest things about boxing is you see stories of these guys that come from nothing, that they're dirt poor, eating out of trash cans, homeless at times, living in the gyms, and they reach success. And we know how much work is put into that. And it serves as a lesson in life, like not to give up, that you can overcome that. Just because you're born into poverty, it's not a death sentence for you. You could fight your way out, because at the end of the day, life is a constant struggle against obstacles that come our way, and it's boxing is the closest example there is to life, to be honest. When you look at the daily struggles that these guys go through, and you see it also that life's not guaranteed. Just like in boxing, life is not guaranteed, and we don't ever want to see that. But it's the same thing, man. There's a lot of parallels there.
He finished off his career with 67 wins, 7 losses, and 44 KOs. You know, I remember meeting Marco Antonio in Reno right after an event. He was sitting down with his family. I got to tell you, I don't know. I would like to ask you if there was ever a fighter in either world, in the MMA or boxing, where you lost every thought that you wanted to ask him. You just went blank because I was a huge fan of of Marco Antonio, and I remember walking up to him, and he was so generous. He told me to sit down, and he started conversating, and I was literally, I only was able to get out a few words out of my mouth, man, and I went completely blank and speaking Spanish too. I was like, okay, no, está bien, you know. He's all, and he goes, ¿Quieres algo para comer? I'm like, no, sí.
Blank. I'm trying to remember now, like with who. I'm pretty sure it probably would have happened earlier when I was doing it. I want to say I got kind of like that with Conor McGregor when I interviewed him for his tour for the fight with Floyd. I don't know, because all of a sudden he was right there, and I was just kind of like taken aback, like, oh shit, there he is.
You didn't go, who the fuck is this?
Yeah, probably. Might have been man, I'm trying to think. Might have happened to me with Oscar. I'm starting to get like doing this for so long, like
Right.
very foggy memories at times. But I think with Oscar I kind of got like that because I was a big Oscar De La Hoya fan growing up. Barrera, I love talking to Barrera. Barrera's so nice, man, and he's one of the few fighters that I've heard that you could be a fan of, and then you end up being friends with them. I've heard a lot of stories of fans ended up being friends with Barrera, and Barrera staying in contact with them.
Oh, really nice guy, man. Really nice guy. Let's see how he stacks up to Juan Francisco Estrada. 40 wins, 3 losses, 27 knockouts. What do you think, man? If they would have faced each other in this time, who do you think would have edged out?
It's tough because I like to say that Barrera's best weight was at featherweight, no?
Yeah, I would say that too. Because Barrera was kind of, like I said, he was a guy that went out. He was, a mowing machine. He went out there whirlwind, but he put a lot of pressure. And his jab was there, but it wasn't the jab that we saw as a featherweight. It just wasn't there. He didn't need it as a bantamweight.
I think he like grew into his body when he started going up those weight classes.
Right.
To featherweight and above. And especially, I think it started with the Prince Nassim fight, and then after that with the fights that he had with everybody else. At a lighter weight, I don't know. You might make the argument that Estrada is better at the lighter weights. And that's the big thing with that argument, that those lighter weights, featherweight and below, weren't Barrera, to me at least, wasn't Barrera's best weight, even though he had already accomplished a lot. And I think he did win a super bantamweight title, and he had 2 fights with Junior Jones, I believe. Like I said, my memory's really funny.
Right. Yeah, he got stopped with Junior Jones, and that was at Bantam. Well, I think the reason why he was so dominant, if I remember correctly, was because he was draining himself to make bantamweight. That's why they decided to make that move to featherweight. If my memory serves me right, and guys, you can let me know in the chat room. D-Style just commented, Barrera beats Estrada 12 rounds and decision. Possibly so. But I think that Estrada, I'm tending to lean with you, Marcos, just because what I've seen with Estrada, he does well under pressure. I mean, he fought Gonzalez. Saw Ringensai. I mean, we've seen what he can do with guys that are coming forward and put in a lot of pressure, which would be Barrera's style at bantamweight. Come forward, put a lot of pressure, throw a lot of punches, kind of get you out of your rhythm, and that's what he would catch you. And a lot of the guys that he did face at bantamweight were smaller guys. That's why he looked like a monster. Going in the featherweight division, I think that's when he grew into his body, and that's when he started realizing I need to develop. I need to just pull the bag of tricks that I have of my real boxing skills to hold up with these bigger guys. They're now draining themselves to make featherweight.
Yeah, I think the other thing with Gallo is Gallo was a lot more lighter on his feet than Barrera. A little bit slicker as well, where Gallo does have the ability to box and move, get in and out. So more versatile on his feet than Barrera would have been, even though Barrera was just so solid fundamentally. But the big point on this is, like we had mentioned, I don't think Barrera really came into his own and become the great fighter that he ended up becoming up until he made that move up because of what you mentioned. These weight cuts affect guys big time. And we're seeing Dio right now. That's his weight. That's his
Right.
best optimum fighting weight. That's where he performs the best. And Barrera, you can make an argument that he didn't necessarily perform the best when he was at his lighter weights, that he performed the best when he was at featherweight and above.
Now we move down to ringside, the Rat King, who has got a compelling records of 47, 5 losses, 41 KOs, 1 draw. This to me, man, would be fight of the year, Marcos. I think that these guys would complement each other a whole lot at bantamweight. I don't even think this. If they had faced each other, I don't think it goes past 6 rounds. To tell you the truth,
Ah, man, that would have been a tough fight. That would have very, very tough, just because of Rungvisai's power. Even though I want to say that Barrera would have won,
I'm not
but I
sure,
keep
man.
thinking, yeah, well, I just keep thinking if Rungvisai would have clocked him, Barrera would have gone down. It would have been tough. Higher weight, different story. But at that weight, I want to say Barrera just because.
Well, I look at this. Is what I look at. I look at the way Barrera, how aggressive he was at bantamweight. That I tend to think that he's going to walk in to a big punch that ringside is going to throw, and I think that's what's going to hurt him. He gets
Well, you
clipped.
could because like look at Roman, the first fight that he had with Rungvisai. He was coming forward throwing a lot of punches.
Right.
Even though Rungvisai ended up winning that fight, I think a majority of boxing fans felt that Roman won that fight. It could have been a fight similar to that one, the first Roman Rungvisai fight. Even though I think Roman throws more punches than Barrera, but Barrera, yeah, it just reminds you how good Roman was in
Yep.
its prime because he was just so complete. I want to say that Roman had just as good timing as Barrera in a lot of these exchanges. Yeah, it would have been a tough one, man. It could have been a fight where if Barrera could withstand the power of Rungvisai and be able to take the punch as well, he would have ended up winning wide on the scorecards. Not wide, competitive. It would have been very competitive. I see him getting maybe a majority decision, but a very close majority decision.
Junior Jones, if anything, he exposed that Barrera was acceptable to a right hand. Didn't see it, couldn't see it, and couldn't defend against it. Even in both fights when they have faced each other, I would really have to lean with the Rat King. I think he takes it.
Okay.
Yep, I think he takes it. I think
My only thing is he doesn't throw a lot.
right.
That's my only thing.
But he's so heavy-handed, and I
He
think with
is.
Barrera's style at that time, that Barrera's stubbornness, he showed it with Junior Jones,
Yeah.
Poison, that he didn't know how to take a step back in box. He tried to get his every time he got hurt. He tried to return the favor, and that's what got him in trouble every
That's
time.
what led to such great fights with him. But
Yeah.
yeah, that's not necessarily the smartest thing to do as a
Right?
fighter. And you hit me, I'm going to try to hit you back. It makes sense. That's like a natural instinct. You hit me, I'm going to try to hit you back. But boxing it's a little bit different because you try to get that punch back and you might end up getting cracked. So now you bring a good point. You bring a good point. Rungvisai is not the fastest guy. But he does land those punches. But who's to say that Rungvisai wouldn't have tried to fight him orthodox and he would have been completely outclassed, like how he fought Gallo in that second fight?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Now we move on to Roman Gonzalez. 49 wins, 2 losses, 41 KOs. Complete fighter. God, did he look great in his last fight? I thought it was phenomenal to see him just come back into the limelight and get the respect that it's well overdue for him. Fortunately, we're getting. I don't know if we're getting the tail end of him. I was talking to Marcos Caballero, who's his trainer now. He's been with him for 2 years. I remember saying that, like, oh man, even though it's late in his career, and I remember him getting like kind of disgruntled over the phone. He was like, what do you mean? No, 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 no. He's the same guy. He needed rest. He needed to just kind of get himself back together. Trust me, he's not done with his career. He's got at least 3 or 4 more fights left in him. And I know they're pressing hard for the Juan Francisco Estrada fight. And they think strong. They feel strongly that that's another winnable fight for them again because they had faced each other the first time. But I think it was just a different time where Juan Francisco was at in his career. I think it makes it a completely different match if they do get a chance to step in again and face each other. But against Barrera, I got to tell you, this one here is Barrera Bantamweight. Again, a pressure fighter coming forward. I think it suits Roman Gonzalez all the way.
Yeah, I would have favored Roman in that fight at that weight, because I think obviously any higher weight would have been Barrera, but I think as we've seen, it depends. What version? Man, this is all dependent on weight classes, really.
Right.
Because Roman's best weight, in your opinion, what was it? Was it? I want to say 112. I think because 115 it showed when
Roman showed at these heavier weights right now. Let's just this bantamweight 115. So ringside, you saw the size affect him. It was too much for him. So I tend to think that Marcos Antonio Barrera would probably be too big for Roman at this division too. And the style that he fought as a bantamweight, I think that he busses up Roman, but not knock him out. I think it's just going to be a very close fight because I think what will happen is Roman will adjust to what Barrera's doing and then probably take over in those late rounds. But it would leave
it's a tough one because there's so many. Here's the thing, like we're basing it on Roman now, what he looks like now, in the context of that he got knocked out a few fights ago, and he hasn't. We haven't seen a lot of him since that fight, so it's hard. And the other thing is, him at this weight, I've heard journalists from Nicaragua say that this is not the best weight for Roman, that he's too small for this weight. That the 112 was a better weight for him, and that's really was his weight. His marquee performances came from that weight. So I agree. You could see that Barrera is the bigger guy, and Roman's punches wouldn't have backed off Barrera as much as, say, like someone like Rungvisai, who probably would have thought twice about going and throwing punches because of his power.
Right.
It would have been a great fight, but could have been a split decision for Barrera, I think, based on that.
Yeah, I think so too. Like I said, I think it all depends on the judges on that night. But I think that the size is going to be a major difference for Roman to keep off Barrera. And the whirlwind that he was as a bantamweight, it just spells all bad for Roman. I think Roman would adjust in the later rounds if he doesn't get hurt and if he's not busted up too much. Because, Marcos he wasn't a world beater. I mean, he wasn't a one-punch knockout artist. He was a guy that had a really he outlasted you.
Yeah, no, the volume.
Yeah, exactly.
He wouldn't. Yeah, it wouldn't be one punch. It would be 3 or 4 that would end up over a period of time that would end up taking its toll on you. Because obviously you're fighting for 12 rounds, and he knew that. He's a smart guy. He's one of the smartest guys that I've ever fought. And that's the beauty of it, to come to the realization, like, hey, I have 12 rounds to work with. I'm gonna pick which punches that are gonna they're gonna pick you apart, and little by little, you're gonna break down. That's what the beauty of this sport is as well. That not every punch has to be a power punch. You
Exactly.
could touch, throw a hard one in there. Make your rhythm so like offbeat that guys don't know what to expect when you're throwing at it, and yeah, there's some little intricacies like that I love boxing when like you really start breaking it down and it's such a like intricate sport with like little intricacies that I get lost in them sometimes, man. And there's so much to learn when you're going over tape and also when you're talking to trainers and listening to what they're saying as well.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. Well, like I said, I'm not so big on fantasy fights, but I tell you what, I had a blast doing this. It really made me open up the vault in my brain to remember the style of the past fighters, the past greats, and to really kind of break down and analyze these guys that are in the division. When they say these fighters nowadays can't match up to the guys from the 80s and 90s, man, bro, when you really sit there and think about it and you really break down their styles, they absolutely can. Absolutely can.
Yeah, some of them can. Some of them obviously couldn't.
Right?
There's a lot of guys that were special back from the 80s and 90s. But I think the main point that people forget is that the science is so much better now in terms of training and nutrition, and these athletes are just better athletes than they were back in the 80s and 90s. That for
Better
any
drugs.
yeah, unfortunately, that too.
That's another story, but yeah.
Yeah, but you would think that any gap in technique or any gap in talent
Right?
could be curbed a little bit, or at least made even, or make yourself competitive because of the training methods and the nutrition that's available today.
Absolutely, man. Well, Marcus, I want to thank you, bro, for coming on for the show, first episode for us for the Stack Up Show, man. I really appreciate it. I had a lot of fun. Take care, and I hope to speak to you and have you once on again on the show with us, bro.
Oh, we'd love to, man. It was a good chat as always. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
All right, brother. Talk to you guys soon. Everybody, don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button and hit that little bell so you're notified when we go live. And I appreciate everybody that comes through. Don't forget every Monday where we should be back on live on Leaving the Ring.